Yeah.
Your voice too good?
Yeah.
Good morning. Let me apologize for some of our voices. That air conditioning was, as they said, was kicking this morning. We're members of the Congressional Black Caucus who come on our southern tour at the invitation of Congresswoman Bernice Johnson and Congressman Al Green, who served as co-chairs of the event. Our focus is education, technology, and teacher preparedness. This morning we heard from individuals in the business community who are promoting teacher preparedness and diversity. After that, we heard from individuals involved in education, and we had some comments and questions from the public. But this is a part of the Congressional Black Caucus's outreach, taking us out of the beltway, so to speak, into the hitherlands of America, so we can find out what's really going on. What we've seen here at Township is a wonderful thing. We wish we could pattern it all over America, but some things you can do, some you can't. Personally, I have school districts that would do anything to have just the computers that we see in this one room. So they're absolutely to be blessed. So there are some challenges. One of the things we look at from a caucus perspective every day is the inequity that exists in America. Every child ought to have the same exposure to being the best that they can be, just like here at Township. So we look forward to the town hall meeting this afternoon to get the full flavor of unedited version of where people think education should be in this community and in America. Also, for the record, some people think because we passed No Child Left Behind in Washington that we've assumed the federal responsibility for education. 85% of the financing of education in America comes from the local level, be it state, county, or parish, or whatever. We put about 15% of the money in at the national level. So it's really, for all intents and purposes, a local responsibility. And we serve as the icing on that cake of responsibility from an educational perspective. We're joined by the chairperson of the Congressional Black Caucus, Congresswoman Kilpatrick from Detroit, Michigan. I will now allow her to step forward and introduce the rest of the members. She's a little bashful, but I'm going to give her
a lot of things, that's probably not one of them. But let me just say, we appreciate Dr. Chairman, Congressman Benny Thompson from Mississippi, who chairs our Homeland Security Committee. To my right is the third most powerful man in the House of Representatives, Congressman Jim Clyburn from South Carolina. He's our Democratic whip and one of the leaders in the United States House of Representatives. Congresswoman Diane Watson from the great state of California. Congressman Al Green from Houston, Texas. Congresswoman Barbara Lee from Oakland, California. Congressman Bobby Rush from Illinois. And Congressman Mel Watt from North Carolina. If we have a few questions, we'll take them and then we'll go right on out.
The Supreme Court's recent decision ruling on Brown versus Board of Education, what impact will that have on trying to close the gap or just trying to help us catch up?
Got my lawyer on the Judiciary Committee, Congressman Mel Watt.
And I happen to be reading the article from the journal on the way down here on the plane. I think it's going to have a really important impact. It makes it a lot more uncertain what school districts can do taking race into account. And a lot of the progress that we have made over the years, which still is inadequate, has been as a result of taking race into account and the disparities that developed during a period that race was being taken into account in a negative sort of way. So it creates uncertainty about the standards that will be applied. It I think makes a lot of school systems that felt like they had an obligation to be affirmatively trying to address the racial disparities, turn back in a different direction. And I think you'll see a lot more litigation about this in the future.
Is there another?
Congressman Ross, you
Did
spoke.
you say who you represent?
My name's Robert Ashley. I'm with a local gospel radio station. It's called Heaven 970 on the AM dial. We host a talk show, a 2-hour talk show every day, and Monday through Friday. We try to stay on the front line here. Congressman Ross, you spoke earlier in the conference here about the culture settling for what appears to be mediocrity. We're wondering what has caused that, or what do you see as the systemic cause of that cultural tolerance of mediocrity?
Well, I think that, it's a reflection of the times that we live in, where there is so many different kinds of distractions and obstacles, so many different kinds of things that interfere with us. Life is much more complicated and complex than it was when you and I were growing up. And frankly, I as an African American, I just don't hear enough about the value of getting an education. That used to be the singular, most universally heard message that emanated through the generations of African Americans. But we don't hear that enough anymore. So I think that's a part of our problem. I just like to say that in the midst of all the complexes of life, it seems like in some ways we've lost our way.
Gordon Jackson with the Dallas Examiner. I'd like to direct this question to Congressman Green, please. The situation took place yesterday that has a kind of like an indirect connection to the education issue. Former President Priscilla Slade her case was declared a mistrial. I'd like to get your comments on that, but I'd like to get your comments also following up on that, on what are the challenges. Does that represent the challenges that remain for HBCUs, for black colleges, and being able to pull their share of the load and bring in quality education?
Well, thank you for your question. And before I answer, let me just say that I thank my colleagues for coming into Texas. I'm co-chairing this event, and they all have a multiplicity of things that they could be doing in their districts, and they've taken the time to be with us. So if you don't mind, I like to turn press conferences into acts of appreciation. Let's give them a special expression. With reference to Dr. Slade, who was the president of Texas Southern University, I think we have to separate the personality from the institution. A mistrial has been declared. The district attorney will have to make some decision as to whether or not there will be a second trial. I think that we have to assume that if there is a second trial, that justice is going to prevail. Many times I'm disappointed with that assumption, by the way, but I want to assume that justice will prevail, and I will wait to see what the courts will do before I will make further comment. With reference to the HBCUs, I'm honored to tell you that the chairperson of Homeland Security has a passion for HBCUs.